What will we do? Who will we become? We decide today. This is Learn, Do, Become Radio. Let's move onward and upward together.
Hello friends, and welcome to Learn, Do, Become Radio. I'm April Perry, and I'm actually flying solo today. This is my first solo podcast here at Learn, Do, Become, and I'm grateful to have you with me as we talk about 3 questions that can help you as you chart your course. Now, Learn, Do, Become is all about architecting lives of excellence. So we're talking about how we structure our lives and our decisions so we can strengthen our families, we can use our time well, and we can decide which paths we should pursue when there are so many available to us. Today we're talking more about the spiritual aspects of our lives. I'm going to be sharing some specific ways that I have been able to receive answers from God. And I want to start out by letting you know that Learn, Do, Become is for people from all religious backgrounds or no religious background. We try to keep things really principle-based while also acknowledging that there's some power that's bigger than ourselves. So today I'm going to be sharing some personal things that have helped me, but I hope that you can take the principles from it, apply it to your life, and then use it to help you strengthen your family and architect your life. All right? Okay, so the reason why I'm talking about this today is because I received 2 emails this past week asking for more information about this aspect of my life. One email said, can you outline how you structure your scripture study? Kind of how do you do it? What do you set up? Do you have a system in place? And another question came in saying, I need more God in my life. Can you help me to do that? Now, those are both beautiful questions. I think all of us need more God in our lives. And I'm excited to share some things that have really worked for me over the years when it comes to reading scriptures and when it comes to coming to know God better through them. I also want to be clear that I know that I can't even talk about this subject with any power that comes from me. I know it can only come from God, and so I've done my best to really pray about this and to ask for God's help as I talk with you. So thank you guys so much. All right, so let's dive into this question of how do we structure our scripture study? I'm actually going to share with you today one way to go about it that's involving 3 questions that we can ask to kind of help us to chart our course. And this is a very structured way that I went about asking these questions, getting the answers, putting them all together, etc. However, I don't want to start right there. I actually want to start back up a little bit and share my main goal when it comes to studying the scriptures and when it comes to coming to know God. And that goal is to open up my scriptures every day with the purpose of connecting. Now, I read a book that was just for newlyweds, 18 years ago when Eric and I were first married. We got it as a wedding gift from our friends. And one of the things I read in the book was that when you're married and you want to strengthen a marriage, you try to connect every day. That means that you're not just passing quickly saying, hey, go make some macaroni and cheese. Hey, go pick up the kids. How was your day? Great, good, all that kind of stuff. You actually want to get to a feeling level where you can connect, where I know how Eric's feeling, what he's going through, things on his mind. He knows how I'm doing, what I'm going through, maybe why I'm a little antsy that day or whatever. Trying not to be complaining or anything in the process, but just being able to connect and get to that feeling level. Now, I really liked that when it came to a goal for a marriage, and that's something that Eric and I have worked hard to do mostly every day for the past 18 years. But I thought that that also applied really well to scripture study. So although I do have lots of little systems and charts and different things I'll do as far as goals and which books I'm reading and how long I'm reading and what I'm writing about, things like that, my main goal is to connect. Now, the reason this is helpful is because our lives are often unpredictable. When we have maybe aging parents or little children or a busy job or a hectic lifestyle, or maybe we're giving a lot of ourselves to other people right now, we can't always plan exactly how much time or energy we're going to have at a certain moment of the day in order to really get the most out of our scripture study. And so, one thing that's been helpful to me is I sit down and I have a prayer before I start. And then when I begin reading, I just ask God to please help me connect with Him, to bring myself in alignment. And then I read and I keep reading until I feel that warm and full and complete lifting power. What is interesting is that when I have a lot of time in my schedule, it comes to me maybe a little bit more slowly, but it goes deep. So I'll be able to sit for a good 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and be able to have that time alone with God to really be able to let it sink in. On days when I'm stretched, or days when maybe I've been really sick, or days when my children need me, I found that that comfort and that connection comes quickly and it's powerful. And it's been amazing for me to see that God acknowledges that I don't always have as much time as I wish, but that He'll connect with me every single time that I come to Him to connect. So that's just idea number one. Instead of saying, well, I need to read this many pages or I need to read for this long amount of time, read until you can connect and try to leave it as open-ended as possible. So if there are more connections or more ideas or more thoughts or things that the Lord wants to share with you, you're not just giving up after a certain amount of time. You actually kind of have it as open-ended as possible. That has been huge and has been such a blessing to me. All right, another idea that we're going to talk about before I dive into these 3 specific questions is the idea about asking questions at all. I found that whenever I can go to my scripture study with a question in mind, something that I want to learn, something I need to know, that all of my questions are answered. I wrote about this actually on a little family blog about 5 years ago, and I'm just going to read a portion of it that I hope will be helpful. All right, here we go. The fact is that I am just not smart enough to know how to handle all the challenges and opportunities that come my way. I have a family who deals with real-life issues. I'm building a platform online. I'm often placed in circumstances where I become painfully aware of my weaknesses. Sometimes it's enough to send me back to bed before we've even gotten through breakfast. However, this is where the Lord comes in. I know that He's willing to teach me everything I need to know, but I have to ask the right questions first. I decided to write down all my questions in a Google Doc. That way, they're password protected, they're available from any computer, and I can easily record the answers that I receive to those questions. Okay, so what kinds of questions do I write down? Here are some examples. How do I get more physical energy so I'm not always exhausted by my children? How can I better learn which questions to ask? I actually love that question. How can I increase the power of my prayers? How can I be a better example of faith? How can I learn the mysteries of the scriptures and better learn to teach through them? What is the best way for me to record all I am learning and writing and doing? How can my husband and I truly become one in all things? Who, specifically, do I need to bless and love that is within my sphere of influence? What do I need to do to refine the time that I spend each day? How can I help my children to know they're winners without simply teaching them the goal is to be better than everyone else? And what can I do about blank, a current problem that's perplexing me? The 2 guidelines I have for my questions are that they have to be about things that are essential in life, and they need to be phrased in a way that puts the responsibility on me. So, for example, I wouldn't ask the question like, why me? At the time that I wrote this blog post, I had about 40 questions. And then what I did was take about 1 question each week or so and then study that topic during my morning scripture study. I read scriptures related to that topic, I studied the words of those who already knew the answers to those kinds of things, and then I prayed to the Lord for inspiration. Now here's the best part. When I first typed out my questions, they all felt overwhelming. I remember initially looking at my list and thinking, how can I ever know all of this? But then something interesting started happening. Each day as I would study and pray, I would receive a little more light. Sometimes I had to study the same question several times before the answer started to make sense. And sometimes the answer would come clearly and powerfully the first time I studied the topic, and I would have tears running down my cheeks as I typed the answers that I felt coming straight to my mind and heart. The point is that I have received answers to every single question. Now, when I add a question to my list at this point, I have full confidence that it will be answered, and that's an amazing feeling. The answers do not always come the way I expect or the way I would like, but they're answered fully enough that I know that God is communicating to me in a way that I can understand and apply. There are so many wonderful things that each of us can do while we're here. I don't want to waste my time feeling sorry for myself or frustrated with my inadequacies or distracted by things that don't really matter. I want to pay close attention to what's happening around me. I want to ask God for wisdom, and I want to do whatever I can to serve Him. All right, that's the end of the excerpt from the blog post. Now, one more thing that I'll add is that learning to record my questions and study those questions has become such a habit that it's something I just kind of do naturally now. I've actually been using Evernote lately, and I have a whole notebook for my scripture study as a scripture journal. And I'll record a question in there in the morning, and I'll do research, and I'll take screenshots, and I'll gather quotes and ideas and thoughts. And I'll put all of that together where now I'm starting to build up this entire library full of different answers that I received from God. Now, one of the most precious answers is one that I have been searching for more than 10 years. So there was a challenge that I experienced about 10 years ago, and I wrote down the question asking the Lord for help. And I kept going back to that question and getting little pieces of answers, a little bit here, a little bit there, and every year I was revisiting that question, trying to get more and more light. Now, the question wasn't answered all at once, and the problem wasn't solved all at once. But what's amazing is just recently, that problem actually has been solved. And I look back over the past 10 years at the answers the Lord gave me little by little, and I'm amazed at how He's given me exactly what I needed when I needed it. I was actually reading the book The Hiding Place to my children recently by Corrie ten Boom, and she and her sister and father had all been arrested. They were living in Holland, and this was during World War II. And one of the things that she shared that her father taught her as a young girl is that the Lord will give you what you need at the right time. And what had happened is Corrie was feeling concerned about death. She was concerned and feeling worried about her life and losing her father. And he said, Corrie, I'm paraphrasing here, he said, when we're getting on a train, when do I hand you your ticket? And she said, well, right before we get on. He said, that's right. I don't hand it to you early because I don't want it to get lost, but I give it to you right when you need it. And that's how the Lord works too, that He gives us what we need right when we need it. And it's taken 10 years for me to see this perspective because I wanted the answers right then. And I wanted to be able to just know that I was going to be able to get through that challenge. But that's not quite how it worked. However, every single month and year that went by, as I turned to God for help with that problem, He guided us the right way and helped us eventually to solve it. Now, new challenges have arisen, which is great, and it's okay, because I know that I'm going to use the same source of power to help me get through the things that are on my plate now as I did then. All right, so that's just a little bit about the power of asking questions. And I do encourage you to start either a Google Doc or a note in Evernote or even just a notebook. Start recording your questions and start studying those. Okay, so today I'm going to give you now 3 questions for charting your course. And what happened was I went to a conference for women and heard a woman named Julie Beck speak, and she's one of my heroes. She's someone who I listen to all the time. She's given a few different talks that are recorded through church and things like that. And I was telling Eric one day, I just turn on the same talks of hers and listen to them over and over again because then I feel like I have this friend with me all day. And so she's just made a huge impact on my life because I know how much she loves God. And so she challenged us at that conference to record 3 different questions at the beginning of our book of scripture. Like actually write them in the book or on a post-it note or something like that, all right? And these are the 3 questions. Number 1, who am I? Number 2, what are my responsibilities, like to God? And number 3, how can I best fulfill these responsibilities? So step 2 was to assign each of them a color. So I had who am I in blue, and what are my responsibilities in green, and how can I best fulfill these responsibilities in red. And then I started at the beginning of a book of scripture, just started going through and highlighting and underlining and circling. And then I recorded what I learned as I went through the reading process. So the next step was to put sticky notes at the back of my book to record the answers. Now I started out just using a few tiny sticky notes, and eventually I needed to get the full page size ones, and they just piled up because I was learning so many principles that were tailored just for me. And what was amazing is that as I read that book of scripture every day, I read just about every day in that book of scripture. Some days I was reading other books of scripture, and so it just kind of, over time, it took me about 2 years to go through the process, but I recorded everything that I learned as I learned it, and I had the post-it notes at the back in 3 sections. So on one page at the back, I had a stack of post-its for the answers to the question, who am I? Then I had another page with answers to the question, what are my responsibilities? And another page with a pile of post-it notes saying, how can I best fulfill those responsibilities? And I'll include a little photo. I took a picture of all of my post-its kind of laid out on the kitchen counter. So come to the page learndobecome.com/episode 14, and you can see the pictures. But it was amazing to see how much information and advice and strength and nourishment that I received from God as I went through this process. Now, here's something that